was a box, a frozen boundary that limits human experience. We say globalized media has discarded all of this and makes unity possible. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good morning I bid to the VIPs, the honorable adjudicators, accurate timekeeper, and the lovable audience that is present today. Under the notion that this house believes that new media unites the world, we on the government team truly propose this motion under the stand because it creates a greater sense of understanding between stakeholders in today's debate and a higher sense of connectivity between people of the global society, ladies and gentlemen. So before I move on to my substantive case, I'd first like to define each of the keywords in today's motion. Basically, what we mean by new media. First of all, new media is a new technology established in the 21st century where it creates a form of interactivity or a two-way communication. An example of this would be Facebook, YouTube, or even TV with the option for you to interact and SMS and opinionate on what happens on the news, ladies and gentlemen. Rejected, sir. And the other characteristic of new media is that it is also instantaneous. With the presence of satellites, we can know what's happening around the world at such a simultaneous rate. So thus, TV and satellite communication is also relevant in today's debate, ladies and gentlemen. Also, new media is digitalized, i.e. it is an advancement of technology that has been established in the 20th century. What we mean by this is that this advancement of technology makes new media not a replacement of traditional media, but an upgrade of the media we had before. So with that cleared up, I first have to talk about the main issue that should be debated upon in today's debate. Basically, we on the government team will prove to you how the new media itself, a man-made medium, can actually unite the world. How? Under our definition of unity. Our government team will talk about a realistic basis. Basically, when we talk about unity, we do not mean we eradicate all sorts of conflicts that is happening around the world. Because we have to understand that good and bad will always exist together, ladies and gentlemen. So basically, when we talk about unity here, we're talking about a realistic basis where people share a common interest with each other, where there is understanding despite the differences. An example of this would be the United Nations. Why is it called the United Nations even though conflicts still occur between the nations within this organization itself? Because there is a discussion that is going on and understanding between these different cultures and countries itself. Thus we say that new media sort of facilitates this. But before I move on, yes sir?
So you concede to the fact that how the world today is not united and the new media does not fulfill that?
Ladies and gentlemen, we concede to the fact that it's not as united. But what we're saying here is that new media makes this process more gradual and more possible towards unity that we are trying to achieve in today's that it creates otherwise, that it causes disunity. And that is what we're talking about today, ladies and gentlemen. So done with my definition on unity, basically on the aspect of the world. We're talking about stakeholders in terms of cultural here, of people from different races and backgrounds. And economical aspects too, between developing nations and developed nations, and also in terms of political, between governments all around the world in organizational unitary bodies, ladies and gentlemen. So basically, our arguments will be divided into three main aspects under that context. Economically, take unity in terms of economy. Basically, the existence of new media has managed to bridge the gap between developed and developed nations. How? For instance, like Malaysia itself, with the establishment of its multimedia super corridor, we have managed to make ourselves more open to the world with the existence of telecommunication companies, ladies and gentlemen. And we say that this also creates a sense of economic prosperity. How? Because we'll show you how there is an increase in broadband penetration even amongst the rural areas, thus increasing the aspect of the economy in that context, ladies and gentlemen. So basically, we show unity here in the first aspect that we will talk about today, under the aspect of tourism. Basically, for instance, like countries like India, they have managed to create a sense of tourism or an attraction of investors of people to come into their country. Why? Because India has a very strong telecommunication company, pardon me. And because of that, we say that India has managed to make it more globalized and more united towards the world. But in the context of that India is a tiger economy, we'll also talk about underdeveloped nations like Bhutan, for instance. But before I move on, yes, sir.
A country achieving an economic status that's proving the world is united.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you an example of Greece. Greece becomes disunited and full of conflict. Why? Because of its lack of economic prosperity there. We say that unity will be much more possible if people are more economic viable, ladies and gentlemen. And that is why our country so basically, on the aspect of Bhutan being an underdeveloped nation, now that China is planning to launch a satellite, we say that Bhutan will also be affected in terms of broadband penetration in that context, ladies and gentlemen. We say that when Bhutan becomes more connected towards the world and the existence of new media, and the existence of the internet, and the interactivity within its society and the global society itself, Bhutan will be the next, will be the Swiss of the East, ladies and gentlemen, because of its geographical characteristic. And in terms of that, it can also be more economically viable because of these people coming in and investing in an underdeveloped country like Bhutan, ladies and gentlemen. And we say that we're not being discriminated here because it also applies to the context of developed nations and also developing countries around the world, ladies and gentlemen. So under the context of what we mean by between nations itself in terms of global society, we have to understand here that there exist many economical bodies, there's G20, G8, between developed and developed nations, and developing nations. So under the existence of discussion, under the existence of economic trade, we say that new media also make things such as free trade agreement much more viable. Because for a country to endorse and practice free trade agreement, it needs bigger penetration in terms of its globalness, because of this connectivity towards the world. So we say that when this economic prosperity occurs in countries like Malaysia, we have bodies like ASEAN, who unites regional basis, and bodies like the United Nations and G20 that unites the world, ladies and gentlemen. So new media, I'll give you an example and analytical approach to this. For instance, I take things like the existence of eBay, of how with eBay, without geographical restrictions, people from countries that are less involved in the free trade agreement can promote their products, and this encourages entrepreneurship, ladies and gentlemen, and thus makes the people more united in terms of the sharing of products amongst the world itself. And it's not just about the globalization of brand. It talks about how even local company brands can promote themselves to the world. And we say that we link all of this with my summary of how it connects unity. Basically, we talk about unity under the context of economy. Why? Because we've shown to you the status quo, that in countries like Greece, when they are not economically viable, they can create lots and lots of conflict. And thus, when we want to ensure unity, we want to create a sense of, when we use this new media to be more applicable. How? For instance, with the existence of new media being more interactive, we see local nations standing up. And we also see that, for instance, like between Taiwan and China, the free trade agreement can connect better to itself with the existence of new media, with the existence of the new broadcast tower in China itself. All of these examples I've shown you prove that new media